Here he is in studio, Patrick Tuohey with the Show Me Institute on 95.7 FM. He's actually going to be filling in for Keesman coming up on Friday, so make sure you tune in to that. You excited, my man?
I'm very excited. This is fun.
Well, it's exciting, too, because you filled in for me. Now you only have to do 25% of the work, 1 hour.
That's right.
That's a lot different, right?
It's baby steps. I appreciate the dipping in the toe, the being on when people are on vacation, hour at a time. Like, it is interesting, but as a listener, I didn't appreciate how many different things there are to keep track of all at once. It's keeping the conversation flowing, it's keeping an eye on the clock, and then you have to do the additional stuff of callers and text line, and thankfully I didn't have to deal with that last time.
Well, you're going to do a great job, so we'll look forward to hearing you coming up in a couple of days. So you wrote an article here for the Kansas City Star, guest commentary, Are stadium supporters playing politics instead of presenting a clear stadium plan? And this mostly surrounds, I think, the Royals versus the Chiefs. But what was your thesis here on this article that you wrote for the Star?
So the Missouri Speaker of the House, Patterson, had a press conference the other day and said, look, the teams need to make their asks, and then the state is going to wait to hear what Jackson County does. And I said, or it made me realize that, again, all paths to a new stadium for the Royals go through Jackson County. They are not going to be able to do this without Jackson County's participation. And despite their desire, they are not going to be able to avoid a public vote. It's been almost a year since the effort to increase sales taxes to pay for a downtown stadium was defeated by a wide margin. And it feels as if they haven't figured out what they want. Every once in a while we get a media story about somebody's hired a PR firm or they're looking at this, but that is all just that's all just background noise. Until the Royals come forward with their ask, we're all just wasting our time.
Unless they run into the arms of the state of Kansas.
Possible, but if that were... Look, the only people that know the financials of this deal are the Royals. They know what they want to spend on a new park, and they understand the finances of what's around them. If the Star bonds in Kansas were viable, they would already be in conversation. But I don't think Kansas can make as compelling an offer as Missouri with Jackson County can. Again, that's not great news for taxpayers, but Missouri is much more able to offer them a deal. It feels like they are still kind of upset with Frank White. But look, they didn't lose because of Frank White. Frank White played a minimal role in that campaign.
Well, you're right. I mean, Frank White was obviously against the sales tax extension last year, and he did a little victory lap as if, like, the people were on his side. Trust me, Frank White is far less popular in Jackson County than the Kansas City Royals are. He had nothing to do with it. He just happened to be the blind squirrel that found the nut.
Right, but to his credit, he demanded of the Royals details, right? We want a lease agreement. We want all these things set in place, and the Royals just refused to do it. They thought they could roll him at the ballot box, and they got their hat handed to him. I get it. There are elected leaders that they don't want to deal with. I'm sure that's true of anybody with business before a city, but that's the politician you've got. You've got to play nice. You've got to negotiate a deal, and spending a year kind of with your head in the sand, and now it seems like Royal supporters are trying to fund the recall effort of Frank White isn't going to get you where you need to be. It's wasting time.
I totally see what you're saying on the team having its head in the sand. I also would say Frank's had his head in the sand for a long time on this stuff, too. He has not been exactly proactive on trying to figure out what to do to keep the teams in Jackson County.
I don't like that, keep the teams in Jackson County. Look, they are a business. They want taxpayer money. Fine. Stand up. Tell us what you want. Include details. Pete, we don't even know what a park will cost. We don't even know what a park will cost. You've got to start there. Say what you want. And look, this isn't just Patrick Tuohey saying it. Governor Parson said the same thing. Mayor Lucas has said the same thing. The team needs to come forward, and they just don't want to. I think years ago they thought that they were just going to say we want a new park, and municipalities would fall all over themselves in a bidding war, Clay County and Jackson and Kansas. But it hasn't really happened. And again, the best deal for the Royals, and I think they realize this, is staying in Jackson County and getting taxpayers to vote for a sales tax. Why they haven't come to terms with that, I don't understand.
Well, I wonder, too, if they're trying to figure out a way to avoid the taxpayer by cutting a backdoor deal with the city of Kansas City, Missouri.
I don't know that Kansas City can generate enough money to
I don't think they can, but it doesn't mean they won't try.
Sure, but they still have to go through Jackson County, and it's still going to require a vote of the people of Jackson County. And pouting and getting upset doesn't change that fact.
Because I think Quentin Lucas knows his, for better or for worse, for right or for wrong, his reputation will be the guy who lost the teams, whether that's a fair way to describe it or not. So he's going to do everything in his power, even if it might be a little dicey, to keep him, try to keep him.
No, I think Quentin Lucas won't be remembered for much. I mean, I kind of think of him as just the mayor of a Midwestern city. The team will come or go or do whatever it does. We will be remembered for what happened with the team. It won't be because this politician got in the way or something like that. Again, the issues are too big, and a 16-point loss is too big dependent on one particular thing. If this had been a squeaker, if it had been 1%, maybe it would be smart to go after elected officials and try to get them recalled or something like that. But when you lose by 16 points, everything went wrong.
Yeah, you got bigger problems. That's absolutely true. Patrick Tuohey, Show Me Institute's here. He wrote a piece in The Star, Our Stadium Supporters Playing Politics Instead of Presenting a Clear Stadium Plan. So you mentioned a group, the Heavies, the Constructor Union, or Constructor, what would you call them?
Business Association, a group of large developers, construction firms. They stand to make gobs of money from a big construction project. And they, in addition to kind of funneling money to Quentin Lucas, KCUR reported that they paid for his Super Bowl tickets a year ago, and presumably
I think that wasn't that the Kansas Reflector or the Missouri Independent?
Originally reported, KCUR broadcasted as well. So they are not only playing nice with Quentin Lucas by giving him money, but they are running the recall effort of Frank White. And again, that suggests to me that even supporters of the Royals understand that they have got to go through Jackson County. Again, they want to maybe get rid of the person they sit across the table from in negotiations, and I understand that. But even if they are successful in recalling White, I don't think that helps them sell this, because whoever replaces White is immediately going to be seen as a patsy.
But it's long been believed, too, that the Chiefs would just want to get the Royals out of there and potentially collect all the tax dollars for themselves.
Sure. Again, I have no particular insight into what's going on inside the camps of either team. I think the Chiefs could easily get a new sales tax to stay where they are and do whatever repairs to Arrowhead they want to do, although they seem to be dragging their feet getting ready for FIFA. But they can do that. Really, the argument is, what are the Royals going to do? And if they know, they're not telling us. And it's been so long, I think they just don't know.
I'm just hearing more and more about this Sprint Center campus idea and somewhere in Johnson County. And that Johnson County and Overland Park are going to bend over backwards for them.
Yeah, again, so here's the thing. The stadiums never pay for themselves, even for the ownership. They never pay for themselves. What you need, and we see this around the country, is you need all sorts of economic activity around the park, the hotels, so that you can vacuum up all that tax revenue, right? Sales tax, property tax, income tax, if it were in Kansas, or forgive me, if it were in Kansas City, and divert that to the project. So if you drop a stadium in the middle of a cornfield, you don't have that development around you to generate the money to pay for the stadium. So they can't just go to Sprint campus. They need to go somewhere that's got a lot of economic activity around them so that they create that broader district that captures all that economic activity, which is why Sherman wanted to build an entertainment district in the Crossroads. God love them. The Sprint Center doesn't have the commerce around them that could support it.
Well, if they include the Starbond District to include like Town Center, and then all of a sudden these additional tax revenues.
Okay, so
I agree with, I know where you're going here. I'm just saying, if you draw, that's the thing about these Starbond districts, right? You just make up the district and then you say, all the additional tax revenues go into the stadium.
And that is a huge cost to taxpayers to lose out on that revenue, to return it back to the developers. But again, the first thing we need to see, because this is all just smoke and mirrors. You and I have no idea of the details because the Royals won't do the first thing, which is say, here is what we want. Once we know what they want, then you and I can have all sorts of educated conversations about what's practicable, what will work, what will taxpayers support. But right now, they won't tell us, and the clock is ticking. We were told a year ago this is so important to start, and yet it's been silence on the details since then.
Hey, they got concrete cancer, man. You got to be careful going out there these days. Might
That's
have
dangerous.
A piece of concrete falling on your head with that cancer
It's
they're
such
dealing
an
with. I just don't know if it's, is it stage 0 cancer? Is it stage 5? I mean, it really just depends.
Wear your mask.
Yeah. So why do you think they are being so coy on this, the Royals? Is it because they don't know or they don't want to share?
It certainly could be they don't know. My guess is that they do know. They do know that they're going to have to sit down and deal with Jackson County, which is why their supporters are trying to get rid of Frank White. I think they are waiting on a recall effort, which could happen as soon as June or early July.
Yeah.
Sherman said the other day, mid-year, well, maybe he's waiting on a recall effort. But again, I think they understand that, and I suspect there's just some bruised ego up at the top that don't want to move forward until they've exacted some political revenge on Frank White. But Kansas City can't do it by itself. I don't think Kansas's deals can work for them.
Well, I've never thought that Kansas's deals really can work. I don't know how you generate that kind of money off of a star bond district to pay off those bonds. So I don't see how it's like, free money to the team like a sales tax is.
Yes, correct. And
Okay.
so that is why, months after Kansas came forward with this star bond offer. Again, if it were a good deal, if it made sense for the Royals, they'd already be breaking ground.
Yeah.
They want this, but it doesn't work. Kansas doesn't work for the Royals. Again, I think they know they have to stay in Jackson County or deal with Jackson County, and they don't want to. And so maybe they're hoping that something will change. I am beginning to think, here's a crazy hot take.
Oh, here we go. Tee them up.
I am beginning to think it is more likely that they re-up and stay at the K at this point than they break ground in the next 10 years. I suspect maybe some of the owners will come to Sherman and say, let's just punt this for 10 years. This has been such a nightmare. And then we'll renew for 10 years, and then in 10 years we'll have this conversation all over again. But this has been such a clown show and still is a clown show because they won't tell us what they want.
And would they then still try to get a sales tax extension for the two stadiums out there for another few years?
Well, that's a good point. So they're committed right now until 2030 and 2031
or something.
So again, they need years to build a stadium. They tell us. So maybe they say, look, let's just punt till 2041.
Yeah.
And, renew until 2041, and then maybe in 2030, 2032, we'll come back and start talking about this again. But I think, again, this loss was so bad, and they have angered so many people that even if John Sherman were elected county executive, I don't know that the county would look at a deal that is perhaps just as bad as it was last time and vote any differently.
Patrick Tuohey, Show Me Institute. Great work. Good column there in the Star. And
thank you.
We'll hear you on Friday, filling in for Kevin Keatsman.
It'll be great. Thank you.
All right. Great stuff.